What 3,000-year-old Egyptian wheat tells us about the genetics of our daily bread. First of all, our daily bread should be our Lord Jesus Christ. He is the bread of life. There's various ways we can have that bread. One is praying to Him, talking to Him. Another is reading His Word from the Holy Bible. And of course, the Holy Eucharist, which is His body and blood. Now, let's remember that about 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, the sons of Jacob had to go to Egypt to buy some grain because of the famine that was in Israel. And this is the grain that they bought at that time. So this is relevant to what we'd like to know about what was taking place at that time. 3,000-year-old Egyptian wheat and what it tells us about the genetics of our daily bread. This is on The Conversation by Michael Scott, postdoctoral research associate at UCL, University College London in the UK. Human societies need food, of course, and that often means wheat, which was first cultivated more than 12,000 years ago. Today, around 1 in 5 calories consumed by humans is from wheat. Over this time, humans have moved wheat species around the globe and transformed them through cultivation and breeding. Most wheat species have a hybrid origin. Their DNA has also revealed the complex history of further hybridization, with modern varieties carrying large genomic chunks that originate from related species. In some cases, genetic material was probably exchanged between species in the fields of early farmers. In other cases, modern breeders have made interspecies crosses deliberately in order to introduce useful genetic variations such as disease resistance. Ancient DNA taken directly from bioarchaeological specimens is particularly valuable for tracking changes through time, allowing us to uncover lost variation and to link specific time points with genetic footprints of crop movement and breeding. We recently sequenced the genome of a 3,000-year-old sample of Egyptian emmer wheat, and comparisons with modern samples suggest a story of how that crop spread from one region to the other regions. Pharaoh's wheat. Wheats were first cultivated in the Fertile Crescent region of the Middle East, where there are still wild populations of emmer wheat, a common species in early cultivation. Emmer wheat is hulled, which means that strong physical processing is required to separate the grain from the surrounding chaff. Emmer wheat is a wild hybrid species that carries 2 full genomes, each coming from a different wild grass species. Other kinds of wheat that we're familiar with today include pasta wheat, which is called durum wheat, which is derived from emmer but is free threshing. This means that the hulls are brittle and easily separated from the grain during threshing. The bread wheat, the most widely used crop in the world today, is also free threshing, but carries one further genome, which comes from a third wild grass species. In pharaonic Egypt, emmer wheat was the most common wheat. It's claimed that the Romans, therefore, referred to hulled wheat as Pharaoh's wheat, which could be the linguistic root of Pharaoh, F-A-R-R-O. Egyptians may have found that emmer wheat suited the local climate, or that the hulls protected the grain from pests in storage. Alternatively, the popularity of emmer wheat could be a matter of cultural preference and taste. I was curious to taste emmer for myself, so I made some bread with it. It rose less than normal, but the flavor was sweet and nutty. We first became aware of ancient cereal specimens in the UCL Petrie Museum of Egyptian Archaeology in London from a BBC documentary. The 3,000-year-old emmer wheat chaff that we sequenced was excavated from the Hemamaya North Spur site more than 90 years ago by archaeologist Gertrude Caton Thompson, and a local workforce. Despite wartime bombing and flooding, particularly the sample being stored without climate control, the DNA from the wheat had survived. The overall genetic similarity between samples is used to infer how crops have been moved around the world. Of cultivated emmer wheats with comparable genetic data available, the Egyptian emmer wheat was most popular in modern emmer grown in Turkey, Oman, and in India. This suggests a genetic connection between the early eastward and southward expansions of emmer cultivation from the Fertile Crescent, distinct from northward and westward expansions. Coincidentally or deliberately, humans have changed crop plants to be better suited for cultivation. This prehistoric selection leaves footprints in the genome, and we found that the Egyptian emmer wheat already had most of the genetic characteristics associated with domestication. Domesticated emmer wheat retains its seed on the plant, but where they can be easily harvested, and this would be disadvantageous in the wild because it prevents dispersal. Domesticated emmer wheat seeds are also consistently large and easy to germinate. These traits were likely present in the ancient emmer wheat. Emmer cultivation in Egypt has now declined in favor of free threshing wheats which are easier to process. This may explain why the genome we obtained appears to be relatively distinct. However, our study only considers available modern sequences and a single location and time. In the future, genomic data from more modern and ancient wheats will allow us to pinpoint historical crop movements and changes in genetic diversity. Samples and researchers from relative regions are likely to play a key role. It has even been suggested that the genetic diversity that is present in wild populations and ancient crops, but lost from modern varieties, could be reintroduced to boost crop improvement for the future. And as new genomic resources become available in wheat, including nearly continuous sequences of whole chromosomes, scientists are hopeful that genetic technologies can assist wheat breeding to help meet growing global demands. Now, another thing that the Egyptians had, we have to remember, is that they consumed barley quite a lot as well. It's a major cereal grain that used to be grown there and all across, and it was cultivated in North Africa, Eurasia as early as 10,000 years ago. It was used for animal fodder, fermenting material for beer, and certain distilled beverages. And were used for soups and stews and barley bread of various cultures. They're common made into malt in traditional ancient methods of preparation. Now, they also used to use wheat, but wheat, in order to make beer, was in order to make the barley malt into a lighter colored. But we know that the Egyptians used to give their workers beer every day because it was refreshing, it was also strengthening, and it was made from barley. So it was not only wheat that they also had barley in ancient Egypt. The top producers from Wikipedia, from what I see here, of barley today, 2017 figures are Russia, 20.6 million tons, Australia, 13.5 million tons, Germany, 10.9 million tons, France, 10.5 million tons, Ukraine, 8.3, Canada, 7.9 million tons, UK, 7.2 million tons, Turkey, 7.1, Argentina, 7.0. And the total for the world is 149.3 million tons. And it's also good for bread, for nutrition, and even animal feed, and for algae-static. When barley straw in England is placed into mesh bags floated into fish ponds or water gardens to help prevent algae growing without harming the pond plants and the animals. Barley straw has not been approved by the EPA for use as pesticide and its effectiveness as an algae regulator in ponds has produced mixed results, that they say. That's just some interesting facts concerning barley. And according to Health Canada and U.S. Food and Drug Administration, consuming at least 3 grams of barley per day, beta-glucan, or 0.75 grams per serving of soluble fiber, lowers levels of blood cholesterol, a risk factor for cardiovascular diseases. Eating whole grain barley, as well as other grains with lots of fiber, improves regulation of blood sugars, that is, reduces blood glucose response to a meal. And consuming breakfast cereals containing barley over weeks to months also improves cholesterol levels and glucose regulation. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.